Hello, it's Elizabeth Busby here, and welcome to Discerning Marriage. Today we are tackling a topic of incredible practical significance to your relationship, and that is 4 things that if they are present in your relationship, you've got to root them out or you will be pretty miserable in your communication style. We call them the 4 Horsemen of Relationships. So these 4 Horsemen of Relationships come from the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse that was coined by John and Julie Gottman. A caveat about the Gottmans, while I love their research and I love the way that they do their research and I love the results that have come from their research, as a Christian counselor, I do not subscribe to everything that they say. Like so many things in the world, right? Jesus tells us that we need to take the wheat and toss the weeds. And there are some weeds in the Gottmans' work, and I respect what they're doing, but when it comes to their actual teachings and some of their actual research, I do not subscribe to all of it. But there's a lot of wheat, so we're going to dive into that today. John Gottman and his wife, Julie, are a researcher-clinician team. They do a lot of research and a lot of publishing about couples. All of their stuff is empirically based. That means it is research-based. Everything that they do is they do it because they have seen research that shows that this is helpful. And so you can be sure that what they are giving you is something that is going to be relevant to the vast majority of people. One of these skills they call the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse is a Christian analogy from the book of Revelation in Scripture. At the end of the world, they bring war, hunger, conquest, and death. Pretty dismal, right? What John Gottman has found is that there are 4 different elements in relational communications pattern styles that bring about effectively the equivalent in a relationship of war, hunger, conquest, and death.
That sounds perfect.
Basically, they bring about the end of intimacy, and it can eventually, in some cases, bring about the end of a relationship. All right, so all of this background brings me to the 4 Horsemen of Relationships, these 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse that will bring about war, hunger, conquest, and death in your relationship if you don't root them out right now. The 4 of them are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. I'm going to go into all of these for you briefly. I expound a lot more about these in my Next Step course. Next Step is this course for discerning marriage. If you are interested in figuring out if the person that you're dating is the one that you want to marry and you want to learn the skills necessary to have a holy and healthy and happy marriage. So getting started with criticism. Criticism is you are harping on something that the person has done wrong. You're focusing in on something that is not good, like you're late all the time. You are constantly messy. You throw your stuff on the ground anytime you come into the house. You know that you are using criticism when you use superlatives. You always, you never, those sorts of things. Painting with a broad brushstroke. It's focusing on these negative things that you're doing instead of focusing on positive things or focusing on how the person can fix what they're doing. If you have something you want to say to them about something that's upsetting to you, work to not globalize it. Work to not use the superlative. Work to say, in this instance, you were late and it was upsetting to me. I feel blank about this action that you took. The second one is contempt. When contempt is present in a relationship, the Gottmans say they can predict divorce with 93% accuracy.
That's pretty high.
Contempt is the sort of thing that will destroy a relationship. And here's why. Contempt is basically meanness for meanness' sake. You have gotten to the point where you are just tearing the person down, right? You are so hurt that you are just lashing out and hurting them. I have heard it said, and this is so brilliant, hurt people hurt people. When you are hurting, it is very natural almost to live out of that place of pain in your heart and hurt other people. And I feel like contempt has its roots in these kinds of deep woundedness. If you are surrounded by someone who is mean to you all the time, you're not going to want to be in a relationship with them, right? It's so obvious why this ends a relationship 93% of the time, because no one wants to be around someone who's being mean to them. So if I'm saying this and you're like, oh yeah, my significant other does this all the time, or if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I do that all the time, that is the first one that I want you to focus on rooting out, okay? Because it is the biggest predictor of divorce, relationship ending, because it is the biggest, most hurtful thing you can do to a person in a relationship in a lot of ways, because it is abuse a lot of the time, it has got to go. So that is the one that I want you to focus on cutting out. So we have contempt, we have criticism. Once these 2 things that are more like active are in the relationship over and over and over, they lead to the next 2 things, which are a lot more passive in a sense, defensiveness and stonewalling. Defensiveness in a relationship setting, it's basically anytime someone says something to you, you spit something else back. When someone brings something to you, instead of saying, okay, you know what, maybe I was late and that was really hurtful, or maybe I do throw my shoes and my bag all over the place and I should recognize that it's upsetting to them and work to fix it. I'm really sorry. How can I make it better? You put up your defenses, and you can either respond by cross-complaining, so like saying something back to them that you don't like, yeah, well, you're always late. Or you can respond with just like, well, here's why I did it, or here, basically anything that you do that doesn't let the thing the person said behind your wall so that you can make a change. Defensiveness is not helpful, as you can see. All of these lead to the last one, which is stonewalling, which is basically not engaging in the relationship communication whatsoever. So it can look like being on your phone when they're talking to you. It can look like just shutting down and not answering. It can look like they try to say something to you about something serious and you just change the subject to something else that's like not significant or not deep. But as you can see, if you have stonewalling in your relationship, you're just never going to get anywhere. Typically, what happens, what I see is that the person who does the more like passive, the defensiveness of stonewalling, ramps up the person who does the more active. So you will often find yourself in a situation where one person is like ramping up and, with contempt, with criticism, with any of those sorts of things, yelling, whatever. And the other one is like shutting down. And so you end up missing each other in that way. So if these four horsemen are in your relationship, I go into antidotes for the four horsemen and how to get out of them and how to reestablish your relationship in a healthy way in my next step course that I have referenced. Link in the description if you're interested in deep diving into these topics. But for now, what I will say is if you recognize that these are in your relationship, first step, acknowledge them and say you're sorry. To your partner, to yourself, to the Lord for treating his precious beloved son or daughter in a way that does not uphold their dignity. Just acknowledge that these are there and then make a commitment to make the changes and root them out of your relationship. I hope this has been helpful to you. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love encouraging people to learn the skills they need to have healthy, happy relationships. I love encouraging people that if you are so deeply in love with the person you're with, and you can't imagine life without them, but you do have these kinds of tough stuff in your relationship with communication, with conflict resolution, with those sorts of things, there's hope. You can learn new skills and you can put those skills to good use and live your happily ever after. So I love having you here. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay close to the heart of Jesus and be not afraid. Bye.